Today I'll be making a high protein whole wheat bread recipe from the Planted Runner. So stay tuned. The bread I'll be making today is from the website The Planted Runner. I'm taking all of the recipes from the video I did a few weeks ago on fueling with real food and the nutrients that we need as we age and making them for you. By the way, Claire Bartholic is not only the Planted Runner, she is the host of Run to the Top, which is a podcast I highly recommend, and I'll link you to that in the description. Run to the Top is part of the Runners Connect family, and they are a great resource with very well thought out articles and the podcast. Since we all love to get our protein, or at least we should, this bread will provide 10 grams of protein for 2 slices. Okay, so let's get started making this recipe. I've already measured out all the ingredients, and I'm using this organic whole wheat flour, Arrowhead Mills. I believe I got it from Whole Foods. So you're going to need 403 grams of flour. Now, I like to measure my ingredients when I bake instead of using the cup method, but I will link you to the recipe down below. It's 3 1/3 cups of flour if you don't have a scale. When measuring, and you're measuring in grams, you have to keep in mind that, for example, a cup of sugar doesn't weigh the same in grams as a cup of flour. So if the recipe itself doesn't have the conversion for you to use a scale, look up what those ingredients are and what a cup of, or whatever the measurement is, what that equals in grams for the particular ingredient that you are using. So for example, if a recipe says 2 cups of flour and 2 cups of sugar, and the 2 cups of flour equal, and I don't know the grams off the top of my head for a cup of flour, but we'll pretend that it's 200 grams, which it's probably not, but don't assume that that sugar for the same amount is going to be 200 grams. So we have the whole wheat flour in here. You're also going to need a tablespoon and 1/2 teaspoon of instant yeast. And in here also is a tablespoon of molasses. So instead of having sugar for the yeast to eat, we're using molasses instead, which I think actually sounds really perfect and yummy, actually, that the molasses is going to be with the whole wheat. So this particular recipe works with a sponge, and if you haven't done that before, it's going to be combining the ingredients along with 2 1/4 cups of warm water, and the yeast is going to get all bubbly and eat the sugar, and it's going to sit for an hour, and then you're going to add more flour to it, to the sponge, and then you will proof and bake the bread from there. So let's mix everything up into the mixing bowl, and then we're going to put it on the stand mixer for about 5 minutes. Okay, so I've already started dumping in my whole wheat flour. We're going to add our yeast. We're going to add our molasses. Now, some people will actually put cooking spray into their measuring cups when they work with molasses and stuff, and I find it works okay. I like this thin spatula that I can just dig everything out and put it in. Okay, and now we're going to add our water. It's warm water. We're going to give it a quick mix, and then we're going to stick it on the mixer for about 5 minutes. Okay, so you can see that it is very well mixed after the 5 minutes on the stand mixer, and we are going to cover it with a towel and just let it bubble and have the yeast eat that molasses for about an hour. Okay, so we have let this sit for an hour, and as you can see, it's nice and bubbly and luscious looking. So we are going to add 1.5 cups of the same wheat flour that we used to make the sponge, and then another 1.5 cups of the Vital Wheat gluten. So this is the Vital Wheat gluten, and again, I got this at Whole Foods. And even though it says Vital Wheat gluten flour, it actually is Vital Wheat gluten. If you look at the back, that's what they call it, is Vital Wheat gluten. So this is what I got, and this is what I used. So 1.5 cups of this is only 180 grams, where a cup and a half of the whole wheat flour is 222 grams. So like I was saying before, you really have to know what the different ingredients are going to be weighing out to in order to use a scale. That being said, I do recommend using a scale. It's just, you know, if you haven't used one before, just keep that in mind. Okay, so I want you guys to see that this is actually breathing. The yeast is doing its thing. If you've ever been to a brewery before, we were in Kentucky a while ago now, and we were able to watch as the yeast was eating all of the different things to brew I think it was a beer, but it could have been some other kind of spirit. But anyway, all that being said, you can see it breathing, and this is what this is doing now. This sponge is actually, if you can see all the different bubbles, it's actually going up and down and breathing. And yeah, that's pretty cool. So we're going to add our flour to this and the Vital Wheat gluten and 2 teaspoons of salt as well. Just going to add it all in, then we're going to mix it all up. This is what the Vital Wheat gluten looks like. We'll add that, and then we're going to give it a whirl on the mixer. So you can kind of see the dough hook attachment, and I'm just going to get this mixed up and have that go for about 10 minutes, and I'll be back. Okay, so just a note, I have a KitchenAid Professional 5+ stand mixer, and I could smell that my motor was burning out. So I have switched to kneading it by hand, and just so that, you know, you guys know that it went for about 2 minutes, but it was just a little, it's a pretty sturdy bread, I think it's going to be. So I'm just going to knead this, and I don't think it's going to need much more than what it already had, but 10 minutes I think was going to be a little too much for my stand mixer anyway to handle, so I've switched to kneading it by hand. Okay, so I have shaped each half of the dough, because this makes 2 loaves, into rounds, and then we're going to put some parchment paper over top of that and let it sit and rest for 15 minutes before we do our final step, before proofing. I'm just doing this right on the counter, just putting it here, and I'll set a timer for 15 minutes, and again, I'll be back. Okay, so our dough has rested for 15 minutes, and we are going to put them in loaf pans, except I only have 1 loaf pan. So I'm going to use this round pan as and just have a round bread. So I'm just going to keep this as in the round, pop it in, and then it's going to proof for about an hour to an hour and a half. My kitchen is actually really cold, so I'm going to pop it into the oven. What I usually do if I'm going to proof something and it's cold in my kitchen is I pop the oven on at I just hit bake, and it's going to go to 350, but I don't let it go to 350. I stop it around 103, 104, turn that off, and then pop my stuff in there, and then it usually proofs pretty well. So I'm going to form this into a log, pop it into the loaf pan that I do have. I'll put the other one in the round pan, and I'll see in about an hour and a half when we've proofed, and they'll go in the oven then. Okay, so I want to show you how she recommends you rise this, which is to put a piece of parchment paper over the top of this, I think, so that if it sticks, because it does rise quite a bit, that it won't stick to the towel. So she has you put on piece of parchment, towel over it, and then I let that rise for an hour and a half. Okay, so you can see our loaves have risen, and they are pretty much doubled in size, if not more. So we are preheating the oven right now to 350, and we're going to bake these for 35 to 40 minutes. And after they're done, I'll slice them, taste them, and let you know what I think. Okay, so you can see by my clothes, it is the next day. I ended up having to make dinner before the bread was fully cooled, and it came out really good. We had it for dinner last night, and I'm going to be making myself a turkey sandwich for my lunch today. So I will cut the bread, show you the inside. It is very soft. It has a really nice chew to it. We had it just with butter last night, and it was so good. My husband, he travels a lot for work, and he said it reminded him of a German brown bread. So that's, if you know what that is, it's something like that, and I really enjoyed it. I was able to freeze the one loaf, and we have the other one cut really easily, really nice crumb to it. The outside of it is kind of crispy, and then the inside is very soft. So this is something that I would definitely make again. I think maybe the added wheat gluten gives it that chew. Not 100% sure, but it is a very good bread. So if you're looking for something to up your protein a little bit, try this bread, and you can use it for toast in the morning or sandwiches or just to have with dinner. Smells so good. So there's the bread. You can see it has a really nice tight crumb to it, cooked all the way through. Now what I did is I put a thermometer into this and baked it to 190, which is the recommended temperature for a whole wheat bread. So once you get to that temperature, you can be assured that the inside is fully baked without being over baked. So that's something too that I recommend for baking, is find out the temperatures of the different things that you make and what they should be, and then you'll have a better idea sometimes than even a toothpick in the middle or touching it, whether that is done or not. So you can see it cuts really nice, really good chew. Go ahead and give this recipe a try. Next week, I'll be making a fiber-rich recipe, which is a super greens frittata. Now, I love frittata, so I'm excited about trying this one out. Hit subscribe and join me next Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., which is the perfect time for a frittata. As the Wrinkled Runner, I have a blog and podcast in addition to this YouTube channel, which I will link to down below. I'm also a running coach located in Buffalo, New York, and my 2022 coaching season is fast approaching. So if you're in Western New York and you're wondering what a running coach can do for you, head over to the coaching page linked in the description to get started. I answer running questions via email at sherry@wrinkledrunner.com from runners and want-to-be runners from all over. And a lot of your questions become content, so it helps us both if you have an issue you'd like to ask me about. Join my email list, which I'll link to below as well. You'll receive my once-a-month newsletter where I share my articles, videos, and podcast episodes, as well as any runner's resources that I've found. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the run.